All right, joining us here on set in Washington, D.C., Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt. Mr. Schmitt, welcome.
Great to be with you. It's in person here,
in
Larry.
Person, I know.
When you're in town, we all come to see you.
It's staggering. I'm very happy to see you, sir. Thank you very much. The last second, one of the points to keep hammering away, why hasn't, here, Mr. Trump on the campaign trail again today in Michigan, he'll be in Long Island, New York tomorrow. He still hasn't received full presidential Secret Service protection. And I keep asking why. Now, in the last segment, Chad Wolf, who was DHS secretary, said something that I didn't know about. I'm not sure Congressman Waltz knew either, and that is you don't actually need president's approval or an executive order. The DHS secretary, Mayorkas, could do it, but he hasn't. So now, having that, what's your point? What's your take on this?
He should do it.
Yeah.
Chad's pretty good authority on that. He should do it. I think most Americans are sitting back watching this and they can't believe it happened again. And so I don't know if this is a money issue. It certainly seems to be a competency issue at the top. So on one hand, I think we want to praise the Secret Service agents who are there on the scene, jumping on President Trump in Pennsylvania and then taking care of business the other day on Sunday. But the idea that a perimeter wasn't secured and there was a rooftop 150 yards away in Pennsylvania, and then now I think he was just a couple holes away. This is like on a par 3. This guy's set up with a GoPro camera ready to film this. As a country, that it's devastating, including the loss of life potentially for President Trump. So something's got to change. So far, there's not been a lot of good answers for the first incident, and I think we got to keep hammering for answers on this one too.
I mean, I don't understand why. We had Rand Paul on, Senator Paul, last night also. I guess he's the ranking Republican on the DHS Oversight Committee, but he didn't mention this either. I mean, you got Mayorkas in front of you and just point blank say, why aren't you doing this? Because the stakes are high for both political parties. I mean, the country will fall. I mean, if either providence or luck, ends, we got a problem, and it's a national problem. It's a bipartisan problem. It's an American disaster.
It is, and this can't be the road we're headed down as a country, right? We, in this country, decide that we want to resolve our differences at the ballot box and through free speech. It can't be by way of political violence. And I think some people, even in this town, have memory hold the first incident. There were some reports that President Trump was perhaps being denied additional Secret Service protection. We need to find out if that's true. And if that was true then, is it still true now? And something's got to change here because the risk is too high.
I interviewed Speaker Mike Johnson this morning in front of a group, AFPI. I want to roll some tape on that, and you'll hear this discussion.
I will go stand on the doorstep and stomp my feet until he does it, but they don't let me talk to the president very often.
Now, I just emphasize that, not to make him look bad or anybody look bad, but to suggest that Mayorkas could do it if he wanted to, and maybe that's where the spotlight should be focused.
Yeah, I think they ought to bring him in. That committee's got jurisdiction, his GAC committee here in the Senate. And I would hope that this is bipartisan. There's no reason this should be a partisan endeavor. You have two candidates running for president. One of them actually is was president before and deserves this kind of protection now. So I don't know why this should be complicated or controversial. Hopefully it's not.
Or change the business model, not just a resources model or even a political decision model, but actually it's a threat-based model. And clearly the threat to Trump's life is enormous, and so they should be covering him presidentially for that.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, this isn't a close call. Like, we've had close calls. This call isn't a close call. Give him maximum protection. Clearly his life is at risk.
The subprime student, this is one of your favorite subjects and mine. We keep doing this back and forth. The subprime student loan debt bubble, Wall Street Journal editorial, just a day or two ago, actually. Basically, I'm just going to summarize CBO studies. Nobody repays their debt. That's point number one. Point number two, I appeal to you. You are crusading Missouri State Attorney General. Now you are crusading Senator. What is it that the Bidens don't understand with respect to the Supreme Court decisions saying you don't have the authority to cancel student debt? What don't they get?
Well, there's two things going on. One is they don't like the law, so they're choosing to just ignore it. That's part of it as a lawless administration. The second piece is this is just pure politics on their part, but people see right through it. There's no, every election year we see some new ploy by Joe Biden on student loan debt. You're right. When I was Attorney General, we brought that lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court. It saved taxpayers $500 $1 trillion, $500 billion. They were trying to just cancel with the stroke of a pen. You're not allowed to do that. And also, it's unfair, Larry, to the truck driver and the waitress to somehow have to pay for the student loan debt that the college, theater professor chose not to pay back. It's nuts. So it's insulting to working families. It's insulting to the rule of law. But they keep going at it, and they keep getting struck down, thankfully, because of that Supreme Court decision.
And they attacked the Supreme Court. I mean, Biden and Harris have both attacked the Supreme Court. And so many of us think lurking behind that attack, they call it reform the court. I call it packing the court.
Well, if they get 51 votes in the Senate, Larry, and they have the House and they have the presidency, they're on record. They will add 4 Supreme Court justices, Supreme Court. They'll add D.C. to the union. They'll federalize elections. I mean, it's about power and control.
Can I ask an odd question? If the Republicans get the Senate back and they get the White House, wouldn't it be wise to reverse what happened during the Obama years? In effect, first of all, take the loans out of the education department because they don't have any understanding of credit or income. That's not what they do. Put it in probably the Federal Financing Bank or some workout situation. And B, bring back private lending. We used to have a private lending system, and the Obamas took it away because they thought the interest rates were unfair and credit was being denied. I mean, what's wrong with a private sector approach? I
think having more options is always good. I also think the universities, quite frankly, have gotten used to the idea that there's nothing really at risk for them either. So something has to change here, this dynamic, because you've got a lot of degrees that are being pumped out. People come out with $200,000 worth of debt. They're never going to, make enough money to pay that back. And so, whether it's more transparency or the universities having a stake in the system, I do think matters.
Last one story: Bill Malugin and others. 1.3 million additional illegal migrants have been found because of the direct airplane flights into this country. So I don't know what the right numbers are. 8 million illegals plus 2 million gotaways plus 1.3 million direct flights. I mean, I don't know. You tell me. But this number keeps growing and growing.
Yeah, we're somewhere between 10 and 15 million people here illegally. It's a national security risk. But that story highlights, Larry, here's the deal. When they say the numbers are down now, they've just changed the way you count them. They don't include those numbers anymore. So we used to get these reports of hundreds of thousands of people every month coming into the country illegally. If you use the app, which is what that is, it doesn't get counted anymore. So this is a way to kind of, as they roll into the election, to make it look like the crisis isn't a crisis, but we all know it's a crisis.
It's a crisis.
Yep.
I think people check your eyes, not the data.
That's right.
How's that? Senator Eric Schmitt of the great state of Missouri. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.